Long before kings wore crowns and laws were carved in stone, there was only blood, fear, and the silence of the woods. When a villager was found torn apart by unseen claws, whispers spread, not of beasts, but of something far older. And as the fog thickened, the line between man and monster began to fade. 6,000 years ago, before kingdoms and crowns, justice was written in blood. One man was found brutally slain, his wounds too savage to ignore. Was it the hand of a jealous rival, or the fangs of the wild? Clues pointed to something darker, a ritual sacrifice hidden in the old ways. In a world where man and beast shared no mercy, the true killer remained in the shadows. Subscribe for the full story and more ancient mysteries. The mist clung to the earth like a jealous spirit. It was dawn, but the sun could not pierce the heavy gray veil that suffocated the valley. The village stood silent, a small gathering of stone huts, their walls rough and unshaped, roofs thatched with straw. The only light came from torches, still burning from the night before, their flames wavering against the creeping fog. At the edge of the village stood the gate, two thick wooden beams, lashed together with rope, its surface splintered and now stained red. Blood. It ran down the fibers of the wood in dark rivulets, tacky and thick, as if it had only just been spilled. Flies were already gathering, their buzz strangely loud against the silence of dawn. No one dared approach. Not yet. A chant drifted from somewhere beyond the huts, a low, droning hum. The villagers often sang to the spirits before sunrise, asking for protection, for mercy. But today, the chant was broken, off-key, trembling with unease. Mothers clutched their children tighter, and men gripped crude weapons, axes, spears, stone knives. Fear was a heavier weight than the mist. Then, a cry. It came from the riverbank. The villagers rushed, their torches throwing jagged shadows across the mud. And there, sprawled in the damp earth, lay a body. A man, face pale, lips blue, chest torn open with wounds too savage to mistake. Claw marks raked across his flesh, deep and brutal, as though some wild beast had tried to rip him apart. His eyes were wide open, staring into nothing, as if the last thing he had seen had frozen him in horror. Crows gathered above, circling, their cries sharp and mocking. One dared to swoop low, pecking at the man's blood-soaked tunic until it was chased away. The crowd pressed closer. Whispers broke out. "Wolf. No, no beast does this. It is a curse." The man's name was known to all, Taron, a hunter, strong and proud. He had walked the forest paths alone, feared no creature. Yet here he lay, broken like prey. An elder bent beside him, tracing the wounds with a trembling finger. He muttered something no one wished to hear. "This is no hunt of wolves. The cuts are too clean. See? Here, across the chest, a blade struck first. A man's hand began this death." Gasps. Eyes turned not to the forest now, but to one another. By mid-morning, the body had been carried into the center of the village. Laid upon a wooden plank, it looked both smaller and heavier than in life, as though death had pressed him into the earth. His wife wept silently, clutching his hand until the elders pulled her away. The village gathered. Every face was present, save two. Rothar, Taron's rival, a warrior with arms thick as oak branches and a temper to match. His absence was noted with suspicion. And Eira, the healer, who often roamed the forest in search of herbs and roots. Her absence stirred whispers of stranger things. The chieftain, an old man named Kale, raised his hand for silence. His voice was low, cracked with age, but heavy with authority. Last night, Taron walked among us. At dawn, he lay torn in the mud. This is no sickness, no curse. This is blood upon the village, and blood must answer blood. We will find the truth, whether it be man or beast. The crowd murmured, but no one dared speak against him. Kale had seen 60 winters. His word was as close to law as they had. The elders debated. Some demanded vengeance against the wolves that prowled the valley. Others insisted it was the work of jealousy, a rival's hand disguised as a beast's fury. A few whispered of darker forces, spirits, sacrifices, the old gods who hungered for blood. The debate grew heated until the sun was swallowed again by thickening mist. The villagers looked to the blood-stained gate, to the torn flesh of their hunter, and felt the weight of dread settle upon them. As dusk approached, Rothar returned. His arms were streaked with mud, his tunic damp with sweat. He carried no game, no catch from the hunt. Whispers followed him like wolves. Where was he? Look at his hands. Does he not smell of blood? He envied Taron, all knew this. Rothar spat on the ground, his jaw clenched. You call me murderer? I would sooner gut a wolf with my own teeth than strike my brother of the hunt. If you think me guilty, then bring proof, not words. His defiance silenced some, but not all. He had long resented Taron, whose skill with the bow surpassed his own. Their rivalry was no secret. That alone was enough to keep suspicion alive. But Rothar was not the only shadow in the village. Eira, the healer, returned at twilight. She carried bundles of herbs tied with sinew, but her face was pale, her eyes distant. When she saw the body laid upon the plank, she froze, clutching the herbs until they crumbled in her hand. Some swore they heard her whisper to herself, words not in the tongue of the village. The whispers grew sharper. She knows the old ways. She speaks with the spirits of the woods. Perhaps it was no wolf, no man, but something she summoned. Eira denied nothing, explained nothing. She knelt by Taron's body, closed his eyes, and left without a word. That night, the villagers gathered around a great fire. It was their way. When death came with violence, the flames must be fed, and the spirits called to witness. Taron's body was placed upon the pyre. His wife wailed until she collapsed, her voice breaking against the roar of the fire. The crows circled still, though the flames drove them back. As the fire burned, Kale spoke again. This blood will not fade. We will hunt the truth. At dawn, we search the woods, for wolves, for weapons, for signs of men who kill in darkness. Until then, none walk alone. None trust the night. The villagers nodded, but fear was heavy in their eyes. When the fire died and only embers remained, silence fell over the village. The mist thickened once more. Somewhere, deep in the forest, a wolf howled. And in that sound, some heard hunger. Others heard warning. And a few heard laughter. The village did not sleep. Doors were barred, fires kept low, and every sound in the dark was heard too loudly. Children whispered of the glowing eyes they had seen at the edge of the trees. Old men muttered prayers into the smoke of their fires. Women held knives beneath their cloaks, though they trembled as they gripped them. At the gate, where the blood still stained the wood, a guard swore he saw movement. shapes shifting in the mist. Wolves, perhaps. Or men cloaked in fur. He raised no alarm, for fear of proving himself a coward. When dawn came, no new blood had been spilled. But unease had grown like a sickness in the bones of every villager. As the new sun bled pale light into the mist, Cale rose again before his people. Taron is gone. But the hand that struck him, be it beast or man, still walks. We hunt today. We hunt until we find truth. And so, armed with spears, blades, and torches, the villagers prepared to step into the forest that surrounded them, into the place where wolves circled, where whispers spoke of darker rites, and where the line between man and beast blurred. They did not yet know it, but the hunt for Taron's killer would open a wound far deeper than one man's death. For in those woods waited not just answers, but shadows. The forest did not welcome them. It swallowed them. When the villagers stepped beyond the safety of their stone huts, the mist thickened, the trees closed ranks, and the silence deepened until even footsteps seemed too loud. The air smelled of damp moss, of rot, of the heavy secrets that lived between twisted roots. Cale led them, leaning upon his staff of carved oak. Though bent with age, his voice was sharp as flint. We walk as one. No man strays. Eyes sharp, hands ready. Behind him, a dozen villagers marched. Warriors, hunters, mothers who refused to leave their sons behind. Even children, barely into manhood, gripped spears carved from ash wood. The death of Taron had bound them together, and yet, suspicion walked with them like a shadow no torch could burn away. It was Rothar who found the first trail. His boots sank deep into the damp earth, and he crouched low, brushing aside leaves with rough fingers. "Here," he muttered. "Wolf prints. 3, maybe 4. Heavy ones." The villagers gathered around. Indeed, the ground bore deep impressions, paws wider than most men's fists, pressed into the mud along the riverbank. The tracks circled, paced, then vanished into the thickets. "Wolves did this," Rothar said, straightening. His voice carried the tone of vindication. "You called me killer, but here, see the proof." The beasts prowl close. But the elder beside him shook his head. "Not only wolves," he whispered, pointing. "Look here, a footprint. A man's." The villagers leaned close. It was faint, half hidden beneath the wolf tracks, but it was there, the outline of a bare human foot, toes splayed in the mud. The air grew colder. "A man walked among them," the elder said. "Or led them." The forest seemed to shiver at his words. They pressed on. Every snapped twig was an enemy, every rustle of branches a threat. Rothar marched at the front, jaw clenched, as though daring the forest to accuse him again. His shoulders carried both pride and rage, pride at his strength, rage that suspicion still clung to him. Behind, whispers stirred. Rothar hated Taron. He envied him. All knew this. Perhaps he lured the wolves here, or fought with Taron in the dark. The words stung like nettles, but Rothar did not turn. He let the whispers grow, for to silence them with his fists would be to feed them. Eira walked apart from the others. Her steps were silent, her eyes scanning the undergrowth with a strange intensity. In her hand, she carried no weapon but a pouch of herbs tied with sinew. Her silence unsettled the rest. "She knows the forest too well," someone muttered. "She has the blood of spirits in her veins." Cale's voice cut the whispers. "Enough. suspicion is a poison. If we drink it too deeply, it will kill us all. But even his words could not stop the sideways glances, the tightening of grips on spears when Rothar drew near, or the way some stepped aside when Eira passed. By midday, the mist began to lift, but shadows still clung beneath the trees. It was then they heard it, the low growl of a wolf, rising from the undergrowth. The villagers froze. Torches flickered. From the shadows, they emerged. First one wolf, then two, then a third, their eyes glinting like molten gold. Their bodies were lean, ribs pressing against fur, hunger shining in their gaze. They did not attack. Not yet. They circled, tails low, growls rumbling. The villagers tightened their formation, spears outward. "Hold," Kale commanded. "Do not break." But the wolves did not rush. They prowled, testing the circle. One darted close, snapping at the air, then retreated. Another barked sharply, a sound that echoed through the trees like a signal. And then, silence. The wolves melted back into the undergrowth, leaving only paw prints and the heavy scent of musk. The villagers exhaled in relief, but their fear deepened. Wolves did not test prey this way unless driven by something more. Hunger, yes. But also command. Why did they not strike? A young hunter asked. Because, Eira whispered, her voice low, they were not hunting food. They were guarding something. The villagers turned to her, unease hardening into suspicion once more. As they pressed deeper into the forest, Rothar spotted something glinting beneath a fallen log. He shoved it aside and pulled free a short blade, its bronze edge dulled with age. Dried blood darkened the hilt. A murmur rippled through the group. "Whose is it? Who dropped it here?" Kale took the blade in his gnarled hands, turning it over. The edge was sharp enough to cut, though worn by years of use. He looked to Rothar. "Not mine," Rothar growled. "I do not hide my steel in the dirt." The chieftain's eyes then fell to the others. Some looked away, unwilling to meet his gaze. "It is proof," Kale said finally, "that a man's hand bled Taron before the wolves fed." "But whose hand?" He let the words hang in the air like a noose. Eira stepped forward, her voice strange, almost distant. "That blade has touched more than flesh. Smell it. The blood is old, older than Taron. Perhaps it has drunk from many before him." The villagers stared. "What do you mean?" Eira did not answer. She dropped her herbs upon the blade, and a smoke rose from them, bitter and acrid. She turned away, her face unreadable. By the time the sun bled low, the village was divided. Half believed Rothar guilty, his rivalry with Taron too long and bitter to ignore. He was strong, capable of killing with both blade and hand, and the wolves had circled close as if to protect him. The other half whispered of Eira. Her silence, her strange rituals, her knowledge of herbs and blood. She walked with the forest as though it obeyed her. If anyone could summon wolves, it was her. Kale saw the rift, and it troubled him deeply. "We are one village," he said as they returned, dragging their feet, empty-handed. "If we tear each other apart with suspicion, the true killer will need do nothing more. He will watch, and he will laugh, and he will wait for our fear to finish the work." But his words did little to mend the cracks. That night, fires burned low again. Children cried themselves to sleep. Rothar sharpened his blade until sparks flew, his eyes cold and watchful. And Eira sat alone, staring into the forest, as though listening to whispers no one else could hear. It was deep in the night when the watchman at the gate heard it, the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate. He gripped his spear tightly, eyes scanning the mist. A figure approached, cloaked in furs, face hidden beneath a hood. The torchlight flickered, and for a moment, the watchman thought he saw eyes gleaming not with human light, but with the glow of a beast. "Who walks?" the watchman demanded. The figure stopped, silent. Then, in a low voice that seemed both man and beast, it whispered. The hunter was only the first. And before the watchman could strike, the figure melted into the fog, vanishing like smoke. The alarm was raised, but no tracks were found, no sign of passage. Only the words lingered, seeping into the minds of the villagers like poison. The first. By morning, the village was a cauldron. Fear boiled into anger, suspicion into threats. Some demanded Rothar be bound and questioned, forced to confess his rivalry turned to murder. Others insisted Eira be cast out, her blood rituals ended before more were slain. Kale tried to hold them together, but even his voice cracked beneath the weight of their terror. And through it all, the forest loomed. Silent. Waiting. Watching. For Taron's death was not the end. It was the beginning.